G'day guys, and today, a video whose form I'm not sure what's going to take, but there's a few things that I feel like we simply must talk about if we are to avoid future bloodshed. First of all, we must engage with the grim fact that this recent attack in Christchurch has the effect of retaliation and emboldening. We can expect retaliatory strikes from Islamists around the world on innocent people, attempting to vent their rage, their frustration of the people of their group being killed. Usually what we've seen in the past is attacks have occurred in Europe after airstrikes or specific occupations and things like that. And what we'll see on the other side from the white supremacists, the people who look upon this Christchurch attack favourably, is that we will see an emboldening. People will look at this and go, look, we can do this. And there will be copycat attacks. There's plenty of admiration online for this sort of thing. So there are a few things I want to look at, talk about, a few critical things that I feel like everyone must recognise and engage with. And these are some of the reasons I think we have ended up where we are right now. So first of all, we have the idea that people right now in the West are under a lot of social stress. We have this blind insistence on the validity and value of multiculturalism. The West is bringing in groups with incompatible views, customs, rules into proximity. Throughout history, this has always been a recipe for conflict. The mainstream political parties of the day are seen by a growing majority as to be ineffective. They can't deliver on what these people want, whether it's a more, quote, right-wing issue such as border security, or a more, quote, left-wing issue such as socialism, the expansion of welfare and things like that. This results in a growth of the political fringes. People don't feel they're getting what they want, and people feel like their way of life is under attack. Now, whether this takes the form of, my traditionalism and look, the family is being eroded and stuff like that, or whether it's people, often younger people, who've been born into the system of expansive government, and they feel like people who are out to shrink their government, that threatens a lot of people because a lot of people are dependent on the government to survive. We also need to recognise the fact that people are under a lot of censorship right now. And something that I feel isn't discussed enough is one of the destructive effects of censorship is that when hidden or obscured information is discovered, it is more potent in its impact because not only is something not the way you'd prefer it to be, but someone or some group has sought to manipulate reality by hiding it from you. Now, people always feel very strongly about this. They don't appreciate being defrauded of information. And censorship, whether top-down or transverse, reinforces the victim mentality of an individual or group as it's just another layer of oppression. Look, these people are out to get me, they don't want me talking about these things, they're hiding about it, and how dare they hide things from me. Again, people feel very strongly about this. Something else that is not remarked upon in mainstream journalistic articles is that censorship does not make someone stop thinking or expressing some idea. It merely forces them to go elsewhere if they want to keep voicing that opinion. This has the effect of creating secluded echo chambers where people are less likely to be confronted and debated. If we can think of a classic example, if you're on Facebook a few years ago and you start saying some things people would find offensive, and then you get zucked, you get banned off Facebook, well, where are you going to go to express those ideas? Well, for example, you might go to 4chan. And whereas it's kind of impossible to tell where people on 4chan are being sincere or whether they're just trying to be edgy, regardless, the effect is the same. You have this somewhat of an echo chamber where people express the same ideas, and not everyone on the planet is going to go to 4chan to debate people, whereas Facebook is certainly a more diverse platform in that regard. People are also in an increasingly collectivist social system. We can think about the two groups, at least in this example. Broadly speaking, the Islamists and the white supremacists, much to their dismay, are more alike than they would like to be, in that they are both collectivist systems. Now, in collectivism, as far as I understand it, an attack upon the individual is an attack upon the group, and that's an attack upon the ideology. There is a limited or none at all, no distinction for the individual. Every person on the opposite team is more or less one and the same, making them all fair game for a potential attack, verbal or physical. And we can point to any terrorist attack over the last few years. In this Christchurch shooting, as far as I'm aware, the people in this mosque were just normal people. They were innocents as far as I'm aware. And this guy just goes in and kills them for retaliatory strikes against people in Rotherham. Now, the child rapists in Rotherham, absolutely, fair game. As far as I'm concerned, they should have been attacked and hauled off to jail a long time ago. But if you're a collectivist, you look at that and say, look, this is the fault of Muslims, not the fault of individuals. We can think about terrorist attacks in France especially. They've had several devastating, absolutely horrible attacks, in that the Islamic State actors have said, look, we're doing this in retaliation for coalition forces acting in our territories and attacking our people and drone striking us, and etc., etc. And to those IS members, yeah, all those people at that market in Nice, they were totally fair game. Little children, old people who might not even supported coalition activity in the Middle East. They could have been total liberals like 20 years ago and protested the war. They're all fair game because everyone's sort of the same. There is no distinction from the individual. That is something that must be recognized, because it's an incredibly dangerous system. Because what's going to end up happening is we're going to have this endless cycle, as I've mentioned, of retaliation and emboldenment. One group will attack another, or one group will first alienate the other to the point where an attack is made, and this has the effect of emboldening the group that made the attack, because they go, look, we can go out there and we can get these people. Look at what we can do, look how strong we are, and that sort of thing. And on the other side, it has the effect of retaliation. These people go, what the fuck? These people have just come out here and attacked us. We have to go and get them. And then they attack the other group, and that emboldens them and provokes a retaliation from the other group. And it essentially spirals out of control and escalates as the groups try to, do one better over another. And this could very easily result in some wide-scale conflict throughout the West, which I want to avoid at all costs. Because in a conflict as such, you're not going to be just killing, radicalized people, crazy people from the other group. No, you're going to be killing potentially millions of innocent people who either are ambivalent about either group, or they don't know much, or they even could have supported you in some minor capacity, but under this collectivist system, if they're not entirely with you, they're against you, and any individual of the opposite group is fair game for any attack. As far as I see it, the main culprit in this potentially civilization-ending spiral of conflict is the state. I mean, it is the state promoting this multiculturalism experiment. It is the state opening the borders and allowing groups with radically different ideas of how the world works to live in proximity. It is the state censoring people, or at least allowing corporations to censor people, refusing to defend people's rights in the states, refusing to enforce the First Amendment, or refusing to discuss the idea of an Internet Bill of Rights. And that's affecting people all the way over in here in Australia, because if I say something crazy on Facebook, I'm the one who gets censored, but it's up to the Americans to come and bail me out, just like they did in World War II. And it really sucks to think about this, but I believe people promoted these ideas because they were hip and trendy in the current social paradigm, and it essentially allowed a handful of people to stay in power and get a lot of money. And we have to also engage with the idea that power is incredibly addictive. It can be as addictive as cocaine. We have given monopolies to a certain limited extent of the populace over dramatically, crucially important things like speech, especially speech. If we can't talk, the only way to resolve conflicts is through violence, through speech, through self-defense, through control of the currency, through control of our own productivity. I mean, it's no joke. We've got a significant amount of the population having half their income stolen off them just by the state to be redistributed in order to subsidize groups from other countries. I mean, that's just what happens. Groups that come into the West from other countries disproportionately consume government services. In that manner, we are subsidizing a potential massive conflict in the future, potentially even the not too distant future. So I don't particularly blame the other team for this in a sort of Darwinistic thing. They're totally winning. They're taking advantage of the system, and I can understand where they're coming from I can understand why the Islamists hate the West because we spent the last 2 decades bombing them, but that wasn't my fault. And I don't see why the aging politicians of the time, your John McCains and your John Howards, who decided we should go into Iraq for blood, money and oil, should control the rest of my life by forcing me to pay money to subsidize groups who hate me, who hate my country, who hate my civilization and wanted to see it toppled. They'll do fine in a coming conflict. They can move, they have the money and resources to flee to better countries. They have the guards, the barriers of peace around Parliament House. What do I have? As an Australian, I'm completely disarmed. I can't even use my basic household objects in self-defense. If some person breaks into my house, I might be arrested for that. I can't speak freely. There's not much I can do to defend myself in this conflict created by the government. On the other hand, on a more positive note, it has never been more easy in the sum totality of human history to push back against the darkness, the censorship, the encroaching power of the state, and speak truth to power. Anyone who owns a smartphone, anyone who owns any kind of laptop, is capable of making content on this grand and great machine called the internet. Anyone nowadays is capable of affecting social change, no matter how minor. If we think back to some medieval peasant who is illiterate, can't read, can't write, who can he speak to? No one. If he does gather in his village or whatever, he can speak to maybe a few dozen people at most, and if he says too much shit, he goes off and gets killed by the local knight or lord. But think of what we can do nowadays. I can speak into this microphone, make a very simple video on very simple and easy to use tools on my computer, chuck it up on the internet for anyone to see. In this regard, I have great power. This is why every single authoritarian reign throughout history has tried to police speech. The simple fact of speaking truth freely is incredibly dangerous to authoritarian regimes and anyone who wants to control you, your mind, your reality, your future, any and all of the above. I think it is absolutely imperative that as many people as possible start making content. Look, it's very, very easy. All you have to do is speak. And look, if you're rubbish at first, that's great, you can improve from there. And if you are mocked, well, if it's relevant feedback, take it on board. If it's completely rubbish, if it's got nothing to do with the content of your video, then discard it. But it has never been easier to fight against the darkness. Thanks all for sticking around, and have a good one.